Hey guys, it's Ted Bogert. Welcome back to the TED Show. You're going to love my next guest. Juan Rodriguez is here with Bliss Cares. And I know the topic is interesting and maybe not what you wanted to talk about at 11 a.m. in the morning, but the work that Juan and his team do at Bliss Cares in our community when it comes to not just STDs, when it comes to testing and housing. And I mean, the fact that I didn't know what Bliss Cares did until I saw the bio. Shame on me. So we're going to learn all about that. Welcome, Juan. How you doing?
Thank you, Ted, for bringing me to your show. We're doing great, here trying to serve our community the best way we can. So I'm glad that you invited me to share with them what we do.
I can't wait. So we're going to take a deep dive, y'all, into Bliss Cares in a minute. But before we do that, Juan, I told you they love the 411. They love origin story. They want to know about you and maybe your why, how you got here. But they love to know how you started out. So give them a little bit of that.
Well, listen, I've been working with nonprofit organizations for quite a few years now. I think I started back in 2001. And specifically in the HIV arena with Ryan White Services back in the days. And it is amazing to see how we have evolved into a new era where things are more accessible and more effective in a way. So, I was inspired to do this work because I believe that we can make a difference and we can make the system much, much better than it is. I'm not saying that it's bad, but there's some space of improvement. Back in the days, my partner died, of the consequences of HIV, and I felt I had a mission and a responsibility to teach others what I've learned and what we can do to improve the services that we need. So, I have quite a few years of experience doing this type of job. I was called in by Dr. Ortiz when he launched Bliss Healthcare Services back in 2016, and he believed that we needed a nonprofit arm to make medical services equal to everyone and have the underserved populations have access to treatment. And then I came into the picture and I started building programs that will benefit these unfortunate individuals who have an STD and have nowhere to go and have access to treatment and medical services. So in 2016, we launched Bliss Cares, and Bliss Cares has, bring a difference to Central Florida in many, many, many ways. We've done such amazing things. Dr. Ortiz has a very, very specific vision of what he wants. We've been able to slowly accomplish many of those things that he wanted in our community. And you know what? That's what I've done.
I love it. I think it's amazing what you've done. I think it's amazing your background. Thank you for sharing that story about your partner, because I think that's the why people need. We always have that moment where something motivates us or changes the trajectory of how we're thinking. So thank you for sharing that with us. I think it was really important for them to know. All right, let's talk about the programs. So a couple of people said, my audience is funny, and they're like, gosh, STDs, I haven't even heard that terminology in so long. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in the world and what you're seeing from STDs and the exposure and the number of cases. And then let's take a dive into some of those programs that you've helped create.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up because, I hear that terminology of individuals who say they haven't heard anything about STDs. Well, you know what? STD's been here and it's been here for a while. And the thing that we have to realize is that STD does not discriminate. It doesn't belong only to the LGBTQ community. It belongs to all the communities. And we all have a responsibility within the community to make sure that we have an understanding of what STDs are, or how can they affect you. Just remember something: STDs are treatable, preventable, and curable. So meaning that we provide the information, the awareness of STDs in our community and how we can have a fair fight to reduce the numbers of syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, HIV, and hepatitis. So, it's important that we have open dialogues about this, Ted. I think that we don't talk about it. And when we don't talk about it, then we don't know anything that can help us understand what a sexually transmitted disease, which ends up to being discriminatory, and it brings shame to a lot of individuals. It should not bring shame to people. Sexuality it's a birthright. We have the rights to have sex. Sex is something we enjoyed, and we enjoy with one we want to have sex with, obviously. But you know what? It is important to know that if you have sex, you might have encounters with some sort of STDs. And, like I said, they're treatable. So if you do get an STD, call us. We'll treat it. You're on your way back to your normal life. There's no stigma. There's no discrimination. There's nothing that will label you if you come here and just talk about your sexuality with us, But you know what? What you learn here, you should share with others. So that way they know what STDs are and how comfortable we can feel with our sexuality.
So, I agree 100% on all of that. I think we have to continue to talk about it, even though hearing you say some of those words, I must say, you get that cringeworthy. You're like, oh God, thank you for me not having to deal with any of that. But there is a stigma still attached to it. There's a worry, there's a concern, obviously. And so but us talking about it, being able to say words like chlamydia and gonorrhea and syphilis, we just don't say it. There's a lot of jokes and memes out there. But y'all, this is still happening, and I want to ask you, and it has been forever, long before Juan and I were on this earth, that's for sure.
Oh, yes.
Tell us about the cases. Did the pandemic increase the cases? What did you see in the last year, and how is the pandemic impacting?
Well, it's interesting, but before we hit the pandemic, we had a huge increment of cases for syphilis here in Central Florida. And we've been trying, hardy and, very strongly to kind of control it with the collaboration of the Department of Health, obviously, because they do an amazing job in our community. But they need allies. They need allies like us to kind of have the services available for those to seek treatment when they have an STD. So during the pandemic, we saw a slow numbers, but now we're seeing the aftermath of the pandemic. So it looks to me people now were only at their house. They were also kind of having a little fun, which is fine because, that's what it's all about. We can't prohibit ourselves from enjoying what life has to offer us. And I believe very strongly that we should not feel any shame about it. But, we're seeing a lot of cases now. We're back on track. We're a test and treat model. So people come here and they get treatment the same day. We don't waste time. The doctor is very, very up forward with this. If the patient comes here and reports symptoms, we're going to treat them immediately because we don't want to lose a case of a person who has a STD not treated and then infect any other 3 individuals because they might be asymptomatic. And if there's asymptomatic, they don't even know they have an STD. And while they're having fun, they're actually, sharing the STD among their fun they're having with others. So we got to make sure that we're proactive in the test and treat model that we have here and make sure that we treat them quickly. We don't waste time.
It's important because you don't want them. You're right. It's not because of the stigma. A lot of people won't even go get tested. And a lot of times if you're asymptomatic, obviously what would be the point? However, it's just really encouraged if you are with multiple partners or really any partner and you're not using preventative measures, you have to, and not protecting yourself. I think getting tested is...
you said the magical word, Ted, preventable. And preventable is the one that I enjoy the most. Because you know what? We have different STDs. There are 27 STDs out there, that we have them divided between viral and bacterials. But still enough. We actually talk about preventive care. And just remember something. Like I said earlier, we could treat all day syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, and hepatitis all day long with amazing results, undetectable, cured, and everything else. But keep in mind, there's one that we cannot cure. It's HIV, but we can prevent it. So if you take the daily pill, which we all probably know, and if we don't know, we can talk further about it, you are exempt of having HIV if you're fully adherent taking the medication. So that means that long-lasting diagnosis of HIV that you might have, it won't be no longer there if you're on preventive care.
Right.
Okay. And if you accidentally not on preventive care and you come to an exposure of an individual who has HIV, you have PEP, which is 72-hour treatment. You seek treatment, and after 72 hours, you're on a 28 regimen, and then the end result will be a negative answer on HIV. So we have ways to enjoy life. We have ways to do many things if we take the right course of action. If we don't take the right course of action, then we have something here that might affect us for the rest of our life. So that's why PrEP and PEP are so important. So I'm glad you brought the preventive word, because that's the one I enjoyed the most.
It's like anything. There are preventative measures you can take. Whether you choose to do that or not is why we are always doing these education and awareness kind of shows. You have so many programs, but as we start to wrap it up, I really, really want you to talk about the trans programs, the trans-oriented programs that you've developed. There's a list, by the way, in the bio that I put on the show. So if you want to learn more, you can look there. But Juan, tell us about that, because that was something I was really surprised about.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that you put my bio with the programs, I did not create Healthy Minds. I support mental health, but I did not create Healthy Minds. So I just want to make sure I say that and want our feelings, because I by no means did not create that program. But anyhow, talking about the trans community, well, you know what? Let's go back in history a little bit. I've learned a while ago by a friend of mine that works for the city of Orlando. He told me that the beginnings of this movement for the LGBTQ community began with trans individuals, trans that advocated for the gay and lesbian rights. But for some reason, along the way that we actually evolved in our community, we forgot to pull those transgender community forward with us, and they were left back, which I consider that right now it is actually the underserved population. So when I came on board, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to seek those that really needed the help, and where we were going to invest some time to pull this community that helped us back in the days up to equality, rights, and no discrimination. So I came up with a program with a couple of colleagues that worked with me along the way called Trans Action at that time. Now it's called Transformation, which is a 7-series educational program for the trans community to provide them the necessary tools to overcome stigma and discrimination. Also, the program has actually created a lot of leaders in our community today that have come out of transformation. So it is a great platform for them to advocate for what they believe in and to deserve their rights of equality. And like I always say, we're all humans at the end of the day, so there should not be any difference between us. When we create differences between our communities, we're not unified. And we're not unified, we will never get to a happy medium to agree on things that are so important in our community. So I'm very glad that that program has graduated many individuals in that community, and it's been an amazing program. We're going to be hopefully launching it by the end of the summer, and we've already done it for 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20. 20 was virtual, was an amazing success. We've graduated from that program close to 500 transgender individuals.
Wow.
And between trans female, trans male, and non-binary. And we're very glad that we took that initiative. Actually, thanks to that initiative, other agencies have followed the step in looking into this community and provided them the link of services that they need. You know, they need HRTs, they need mental health, they need housing, they need STD treatments, they need preventive care. I mean, they need all these things just like anybody else. But these individuals are ashamed, and they believe they don't deserve a space where they can be or participate in. And this is the space we offer for them to make sure they are acceptable, respectable, and equally treated the same like any other individual who comes here to seek treatment.
Oh, it's just beautiful what you all are doing. If you haven't figured it out, it's not just Bliss Cares, but it's definitely Juan Cares. Tell them the best way to find out more. If you all want to find out about testing, education, any of the programs like the Transformation program that Juan was just talking about, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Well, they can reach us through our webpage, which you actually posted here, blisscares.org. You can reach out to our office, which is 407-203-5984. But hey, everybody here in Orlando knows my number. So it's 407-670-9557. Reach out to me. I'm more than happy to have any type of conversation with you all, whether it's transgender rights and equality, whether it's STD, we have numerous subjects that we love to talk about. You know, we here in our office, we got 35 staffs. We have a great relationship with the clinic, which is what Dr. Ortiz began this whole movement with, which is Bliss Healthcare Services, now known as Bliss Health. And, you know, we're here to talk about sex all day long, if that's what you want to do. I mean, basically, sex is what brings us to this conversation.
Yes.
And, you know, we should not feel shame of who we are. The essence of who we are is the most important thing. Don't ever lose that, because who you are is who you are and what you believe in.
Amen. And with that, we're going to leave. Juan Rodriguez, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing everything that you and your team do. Guys, go to blisscares.org, or Juan will put those phone numbers in the comments after we're done. Thank you. Come back anytime. This is something we need to continue to talk about. And like Juan said, not have a stigma attached to it. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask and get more educated. All right, Juan, thank you so much. You guys will be back later on. Reach out to blisscares.org or Juan directly. We'll see y'all soon. Bye, everybody.